Bones are everywhere inside of Elden Ring, and if we're being real, they pop up more than family members when you've just won the lottery, which is really saying something. But apart from people acknowledging the presence of so many boners, I believe something that's been heavily overlooked is the power that resides in them. This is a video I'm really excited to make, so please stick around and find out exactly the true power behind the bones of Elden Ring. A goal of mine before the end of the year is to reach 20,000 subscribers. If, and only if, you do enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel. Without any further ado, darling, please sit back, relax, grab a good bowl of salted, succulent and juicy prawns if you want, and enjoy. The process of the Erd Tree is as follows. A person is born, a person lives, and then a person dies, and their body, their soul, is returned to the Erd Tree, where they are then reborn anew as a new person, and the cycle continues on and on and on. And the Golden Order is pretty content to let everyone know that that is the way things are, and that will never change. But there are some contradictions. The first of which is in the catacombs. Deep in the catacombs lies the roots of the Erd Tree, where corpses are placed upon, and their energy and their life force is supposedly reincarnated into a new body. And yet when we actually go and see these bodies, you'll notice something a bit strange. Over the many, countless hundreds of years, possibly thousands of years since their arrival, they have not been destroyed. They have not disintegrated. They are still there. To me, that makes no sense. There's two possible outcomes here. Either the conditions inside the catacombs are enough that their bodies are able to be preserved, or there is something the Golden Order is not telling us. And I believe it is that those who are returned to the Erd Tree by the roots are in fact used as a power source for the Erd Tree, and by proxy its god. There are a lot of reasons why I believe bones are intrinsically linked to the powers of the outer gods, so let's get straight into it. First off, if you go inside of Radhagon's boss fight and you look at the Elden Ring inside of his chest, you'll notice something a bit strange. Is it just me, or do they look like little bones that have been curved? To me, it looks uncanny. This theme of bones further increases when the Elden Beast comes about after having defeated Radhagon and his body gets pulled into the water. Out of the water comes the sacred relic sword, which is made of the spine of Radhagon and Marika. Something very interesting to note about the sacred relic sword is, in Catholic religion, you'll find that there are these things called relics. The relics consist of things like hair, body parts, bones. They believe that God, if he so wills, works miracles through the relics of saints, whose body parts are used in the relics. This works really well with the sacred relic sword, considering Marika and Radhagon are a god, not to mention the greater will, which is an outer god. To me, the connection between Radhagon and Marika, the sacred relic sword, and the bones inside of the Elden Ring are no doubt a connection to Catholic practice. On the topic of spicy body parts spicing up the world with their glorious divine magic, if you look inside of the Elden Beast, you'll notice these strange stringy bits. If you compare these to the human nervous system, to me this seems a bit too much of a coincidence, and I think, considering what we've just talked about the bones, it plays in really nicely, for it further proves the idea that body parts and bones have a really integral role inside of Elden Ring. Yet if we then go back to the catacombs, why on earth would they be needing to feed this power to the Erd Tree? Unless there was a limit to the amount of power they could have, and so they needed the citizens of the lands between to fuel them. There's always been a lot of social problems that have been brought up and talked about inside of From Software games, even if very slightly and very subtly. And I think this is a really good example of that. The rich and the poor, the powerful and the weak. The weak are needed for the powerful people to stay powerful. They fight their wars, they clean their dishes, they cook their food, they drive them places, they clean the streets. All these kind of things are done by the weaker people, and without it, the world of the powerful crumbles. And I believe ever so subtly, that is exactly what is going on inside of Elden Ring. I believe that the gods of Elden Ring's world are stealing the power from the people of the lands between and using it for their own purposes. And this is not something that started with Marika, for evidence of this can be found dating back to the Haunsant's Divine Gates. The Divine Gate rests upon a near limb, and it is made of corpses. Littered around the boss arena where we fight Promised Consort Radhn are multiple more bodies. The bodies upon the divine gate are fused together. It's most likely these bodies were actually shamans, for we know the Hornsent have an obsession with the shaman and their fusing properties and how that could be used for their dynasty. Considering they all seem to be shamans, I think it's pretty safe to say that the power that resides inside of bones and bodies is not unique to the shaman. The unique part was their fusion properties, which allowed the building of these divine gates. For the fact they use shamans kind of suggests to me that they had tried it previously in the past and it failed. Something similar to this can be found in the Eternal Cities, where we see these giant guys, and surrounding them are these corpses. Now, it very much looks like the same sort of corpses that exist outside of the Divine Gate, and which are attached to the Divine Gate in of itself, because like we just said, the Divine Gate is made out of bodies. There's a lot of irony with the Hornsent wanting to connect with the Outer Gods, as that's what it really seems like. We know Marika had contact with the Greater Will, and it very much is hinted to us in the DLC that that is when she gained her powers. The irony comes when you consider that the Hornsent's age was supposed to be of the Crucible, an age which is heavily intrinsic to nature. It is the life force of all things, a crucible melting pot, which then results in these animalistic features. It comes back to a quote that I heard quite a while ago. We always crave what we cannot have. Marika's age was defined by gods, and yet she wanted to break away from them. Yet the Hornsent's age was defined by nature and the more animalistic aspects of the Crucible, and yet they craved divinity as seen with the Divine Gates. These two dynasties juxtaposition each other. They are two opposites which crave what the other has. On the topic of the Eternal Cities, more can be found. If you go down to the Eternal Cities, you'll find the finger-slaying blade, a blade that has an eerie similarity to the Sacred Relic sword. The connection is further proved when you look at the item description, where it talks about how it is a blood-drenched fetish. A fetish is something that is used or believed to have supernatural properties. This is all without mentioning, again, that if you actually look, it says that it has the ability to harm the Greater Will and its vassals. This is crazy. A bone has the ability to inflict such damage, which further proves the idea that bones are a source of power and a way that connects to godly beings, for how else can you defeat a godly being other than to use the power of one? We're never exactly told who the Eternal City's outer god or god was. We're never told. But we can infer. The fact that the finger-slaying blade is actually able to harm the Greater Will and its vassals suggests to me there is some destined death going on inside of it, suggesting the gloam-eyed queen was the god of this sort of dynasty. This is further reinforced when if you look at the chests inside of the Eternal Cities, you'll notice this figure with a purple brooch and a robe. This figure is the same one we see at the Chapel of Anticipation multiple times at the start of Elden Ring, and the figure's brooch and robes strikingly look similar to that of the Godskin nobles, which were like children to the gloam-eyed queen. Given the size of the dagger-like object, it seems very likely that it was a child, and looking further, it's deformed. The spine is twisted at an angle. Item descriptions say the finger-slaying blade was proof of the high treason of the Eternal Cities, so whether or not this was a baby god of the Eternal Cities, or one of the Golden Order, is really unknown. Personally, I quite like the idea that it was one of the Eternal Cities. The gloam-eyed queen was an emperyan in her own right. It's only fitting in my opinion that if she had a child, it would also inherit the powers. But what if this child came out stillborn? What if it died upon birth, deformed? But all might have not been lost, for perhaps the baby would have retained a part of its mother's powers. The power to slay a god. Well, then that'd be a different story, and that body could be used to form something truly great. The finger-slaying blade, a bloody fetish whose name has been lost to time. If the finger-slaying blade is what I say it is, it also proves that godly beings have a higher concentration of power in their bones than other individuals inside the lands between. The reason I believe this to happen is perhaps due to the amount of power that has been coursing through this certain family for so long. Perhaps it's spread down generationally, allowing their power to increase, and perhaps even to the feeble minds appear godlike. But that last point is a little less concrete, as there's not really much to fully back it up, as a lot of things are left to the imagination. I thought it really important to mention that I don't believe that the whole reincarnation process of the Golden Order is completely a lie. I do believe partially it is true, but I think in a lot of cases, when they are returned to the Erd Tree, they are used for a malicious purpose in the fact of stealing the power from their bodies. Because if we're being real, a lot of the reincarnation stuff is hearsay. We hear that it's something that's happened, and we hear from people like the Dung Eater that it happens because he curses their lineage and the bodies they reincarnate, but we don't actually get any first-hand experiences. Of course, that's to be expected with reincarnations because it's, well, reincarnations, but we still don't get any definitive proof it is actually true. The only proof we get is that some people are refused from returning to the Erd Tree, but then again, that could also be seen as they aren't worthy enough to be used as basically canned food. Going back into Boner territory, I want to talk about the Fallen Hawks. They are a company of slaves. They were sent to go and explore the underground. Only when they ran out of fire, they resorted to burning their comrades' very own bones. This process led to the Ghost Flame. From the burning of this sacred power, the Ghost Flame arose. Its icy flame would go on to empower those of the Fallen Hawks, and they'd use it in their arrows and as a way to light up their path. It's very curious to note that all the depictions of the Ghost Flame show it looking very much similar to Grace, and item descriptions even mention it themselves, how it seems to be some counterpart to Grace. I've seen a lot of people say that they believe the Ghost Flame was a power of an outer god, but I have a different theory. I believe the Ghost Flame's power is the true power of man, the true power that exists within their bones, yet which is locked away from them by the outer gods and the gods that reign their world. I believe the reason why the Ghost Flame looks so similar to Grace is because in a lot of ways it is Grace, only without the illusion of warmth and without the presence of the gods, leaving a space which was once held with divinity to a place of cold. The Fallen Hawks are really skin to the bone. They are basically walking skeletons. Their eyes seem to have disappeared. Now, whether this is a byproduct of the Ghost Flame or it's just something from not having enough food and by proxy malnutrition is really unknown, and I think it's really up to your own interpretation. I personally like the idea that the bones have been stored away in their bodies for so long that this dormant power is so foreign that it's destroying their bodies from the inside. But like I just said, I would absolutely love to hear your opinion on this. Something that also needs to be talked about is Rossus, who is an usherer of death and seems to be the main figurehead when it comes to the religion of the Ghost Flame. The fact he's an usher of death maybe suggests that with the Ghost Flame there is some sort of finality to death that there isn't when it comes to the Golden Order. Plus he's basically a skeleton himself, so bonus points there. Another great example of bones and powers is the putrescent knight which guards Saint Trina. It is stuck together with this goop, but at its core it is a skeleton. If you look, you can definitely see it. It rides upon a horse, and there's something really interesting about this. Right, we are never told what exactly happened to Radhn's body. I'm 100% convinced that this body is in fact that of Radhn's, and the horse is Leonard. This makes perfect sense considering Miquella's other half, Saint Trina, is in fact the brother of Radhn, even if subconsciously he cares for his brother, though not the one that's trying to manipulate everyone, no, the one that is the pure embodiment of Miquella's love, Saint Trina. Further proof that this is Radhn, is Leonard, is the fact that Saint Trina was discarded down this cavern, just like how Radhn's body probably would have been, as over the millennia since the shattering, it probably would have a lot of wear and tear. But back onto the topic of bones, it's right there, it's made out of bones that's held together. There's also the fact that Putrescent Knight is a lot more skilled than the other sort of skeletons we find inside of Elden Ring, suggesting that when they were fully formed and they had flesh attached to the skin, they were someone quite important. But there is so much more importance than what I've just talked about to the Putrescent Knight and what is possibly Radhn. Radhn is part shaman through his father Radhn. The shamans confused together with other beings. Radhn's other siblings do this perfectly well. Rykard fuses together with the god-devouring serpent. Ranni possibly fuses, considering she fuses with the body of the doll. Although, TLDR, that could just be the kind of Celovus magic, but there is a possibility it is somehow partially shaman, or perhaps even Celovus used partially shaman techniques to perform his doll techniques. And finally, we have Radhn, whose bones have seemed to fuse together with the same Trina-esque goop. To explain why this is important, we're given a lot of ideas that the power actually resides in the bones, but a lot of the information could also be interpreted as it's the whole body that's important. But I think this kind of proves in a way that a lot of the power is located in the bones. I still do believe there's power in the other parts, but I think it's mainly centred upon the bones. I do also want to say there does look to be other spines attached to this amalgamation. Possibly it could be multiple corpses mashed together, but the main one is Leonard and Radhn. I can't be the only one that finds the significance of the Sun Realm and its graves to be a really interesting part of Elden Ring's lore. The skeletons holding the Sun Realm shields have some gravekeepers next to them, and they hold the grave scythe. These aged gravekeepers watch over long forgotten graveyards throughout the lands between. The fact the gravekeepers and the Sun Realm soldiers can be found in such close proximity suggests to me that they are in fact connected. The fact you also find Sun Realm shield wielders inside the Lands of Shadow suggests that it predates the Golden Order, which is further reinforced by the fact the shield states that the Sun Realm's seat has long since faded away. Also, looking upon the shield of the Sun Realm, you'll notice what looks like a divine tower. Now, if you see, it looks a bit different to the divine tower we see inside of Elden Ring, but it's got the top bits, it's got the windows. The only difference is the walls surrounding it. But considering we see on top of the Divine Tower meteoric debris from what we assume was the meteor we hear so much about, it's very likely that these walls were destroyed long ago, just leaving this pillar bit, which by the way, I'm still dead convinced that they are made of the same sort of white chalky tree stuff we see in the underground of Elden Ring and in the Mountaintop of the Giants. When you hit those trees, they make the same effects that they do when you hit the Divine Towers. That's all I'm saying, and they look really similar, just carved and sculpted. If it is actually made out of a tree, it could also explain Nightreign and the fact that the Divine Tree, Great Tree-esque things curl around the Divine Tower. Going back to bones, if you look on the Divine Tower, there's these things that look like spines, and there's all these sort of insignias, not to mention the Fell God's eye, all which are body parts. I think if anyone knew the full truth of what actually goes down with the bones, it was those of the Sun Realm. Which is further reinforced by the graveyards, which aren't connecting to the roots of any kind of great tree. They held dignity for their dead and allowed them to rest. They didn't force them to become basically mindless slaves being sucked off for all eternity. The fact they didn't need to use the bones, or at least not in a sort of obvious way that we can infer, it kind of suggests to me they had other ways of contacting divinity. The outer gods are all derived from the One Great, and they all seem like a big bickering family. Perhaps at the time of the Sun Realm, they were more on a better accord, a better relationship, and that led to more communication and knowledge being shared with those in the lands between. If you need any more proof, look no further than the Fire Giants. In the second phase of the Fire Giants, he rips off his leg, which has the bone still in it, and offers it, seemingly, to the Fell God. This is another example of bones being used as a sort of offering or communication to the outer gods. And it really does make me think, what other pieces of culture, what other techniques are lost to time that we'll never know? So everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. I don't normally say this at the end of the video, but we do have a Discord channel, and it is always linked in the pinned comment at the top of the description. Up to you if you join, but it's there if you want to. As always, if there was anything in this video you thought I could improve on, please let me know, as I want to make the best content possible for you all. Anyway, enough of the rambling. Please friends, don't you dare go hollow, and may you find your worth in the waking world. Goodbye everyone.